Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Jamie, homeschool mom of 6 and editor at homeschool.com. Over the last few weeks, we've been interviewing experts in various fields of education, all of this to help us as homeschool parents have a better understanding of certain areas as we teach our children at home. And it's true that education starts with ourselves. As we learn, we grow, and we become better parent teachers. And so before we introduce our special guest, I do want to invite you to visit homeschool.com. I'm pretty proud of the fact that we work very hard to provide homeschool families with free tools for their homeschooling journey. So we want you to visit and discover some of these resources for yourself. And so now, before we get started, I'd like to introduce our guest for today. Sharon Fisher is a wife, mother, and grandmother who has a passion for encouraging homeschool parents and Christian educators to teach children with excellence and with a biblical worldview. She holds a BS and an MA in elementary education. She has many years of full-time teaching experience in the elementary classroom, and she's also served as curriculum coordinator for Bob Jones Academy and as an elementary author for BJU Press. She's contributed to a variety of elementary educational materials and has presented workshops both nationally and internationally on a variety of topics and teaching methods. And so that right there is why she is our guest today. She is here to help us refine our skills as parent teacher educators. So we're going to be chatting about using manipulatives and hands-on methods for teaching math, and we can probably apply some of this even to other homeschool subjects as well. So Sharon, we are thrilled to have you here today, and we look forward to hear what you have for us.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking with you friends as well.
Thank you so much. And so we're going to talk about manipulatives, and I know you've got a wealth of information for us, and I feel like that is a huge component of really adding a depth of understanding to teaching our children mathematics, especially.
Absolutely. And if you go to any convention and walk around, you'll see all kinds of manipulatives available. There's all kinds of things that catch your attention and also capture your kids' attention. So definitely you want to have a nice variety of things to teach your kids math.
Awesome. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and take it away and share with us what you have for us today.
Super. I'm excited to be able to do that. All righty. I think that the most important thing in teaching math is teaching your kids to understand it. I went to public school. I went to Christian school for a couple of years, and then I went to public school. And at that time, there was something called new math. I still don't know what new math is, but my parents did not know what it was. And so when math got to a certain level, I struggled. I could memorize, but I was a visual learner. And so I got to the point, even in middle school and high school, when we were talking about upper level math, that I was literally drawing pictures of what the teacher was doing on the board, because when I got home, I totally forgot what he said. I was not an auditory learner. And so then I would sort of go back to the back of the book and find the odd numbers and kind of figure those out and do double work, and then come back to the problems that I had on my page and it was very frustrating. And, I did the lowest level of math possible to graduate because I thought, I don't need this. This isn't important. I had no value in it, with the exception of things like, counting money, making sure that, I didn't overspend, that sort of thing. But I really didn't understand math, and I really didn't understand the significance of it. And as homeschool parents, we're teaching our whole child. We're not just teaching them math for the sake of math, or because there's going to be a test, or because this is part of their education, but math is part of their life skills. And so we want to be able to teach our whole child and teach them how to use math in 5th grade or in kindergarten, at the age of 7, at the age of 11, at the age of 20. And for them to be able to do that, they need to understand it. And I think a lot of times math is one of those things that we kind of separate from the other subjects. You know, if we practice it enough or memorize it enough, they'll get it. And, you know, for some kids, that's true. But for a lot of kids, it's not true. And they don't like math. And I was one of those kids. However, when I started teaching math using materials that were designed to teach a child to understand, I, as an adult, started understanding for the first time myself. And I loved teaching math because it was fun. You know, the kids were getting it. And so a lot of parents will tell us the same thing, that they started teaching their kids math and all of a sudden they started understanding it as well. It's kind of hard to teach something to your child for understanding when you yourself don't understand it. So, you know, having a well-written teacher's edition is very helpful. But the main point here, obviously, is that if you want your child to be able to use this skill, they need to understand the math that they're using. So let's talk about a typical day. Every day your child is using math. So as your child is using math, point those things out. You know, you're driving, you're estimating, you know, your how many gallons of gas you need, or how many more miles you can go before you need to get gas, or how long it's going to take you to get somewhere. You keep a calendar. If your kids are older, they've got their own calendars to keep. We're keeping track of things that we spend. We're measuring things. We're cooking. Your kids are playing sports. There's a lot of math involved. So when you're talking about math, make that part of your everyday life, just like you would other things. And then make sure your kids are doing some hands-on. I can't say that enough. If you're just talking about math and you're not really doing it, they're not going to really have opportunity to understand. And the same is true for science. When we talk about science process skills, they're not just learning about science, they're actually doing it. So the same is true with math. You know, when it comes to math, they could make a mistake. They might actually, you know, not calculate something correctly. And it's okay, because you're in a home environment. It's safe to make mistakes at home, right? And we as adults make mistakes. We miscalculate. I talked to a dad one time at a convention, and he said his son really likes to build, but he really struggled with math and with angles. And so we were talking through some things, and I said, what is something you need to have done in your home? And he said, you know, I think we'd like to have a picnic table and some chairs. And I said, why can't you have your son design? Let's go to the lumber store and design what that would look like. Let him plan what it would look like, how long it is, how many people you need to take care of. And then let's, you know, figure out what is the best use of the wood so we don't waste any, and I'll plan. You know, this is going to take a while. This might take you 2 weeks to plan and organize, but at the end of the day, he will have something that he's done and be proud of. And he loved the idea, but he said, what if he makes a mistake? And I said, well, you know, if the table's an inch too short, or, you know, 2 inches too short, he'll learn, just like everybody else does, to make adjustments. It's still usable. So just like when we cook and we put too much pepper in it, or we didn't add enough something to it, right? We still eat it. We usually apologize. This is a little dry, but this is real life. And so being able to use math in their everyday life and to be able to talk about that is important for your kids as well. And by the way, it's more fun when they're doing. So another reason that it's important to teach your kids to understand math, that it's because we want them to think critically. Okay, Lord knows, after coming through this last year, critical thinking is extremely important. And so not only are we teaching our kids morals and values and to think carefully in their day-to-day, but it's also in their lessons. Talking about critical thinking in the way that they write things, in the decisions that they make, in understanding history, in their science, but also in math. And so we're teaching kids that they not only need to comprehend the facts and formulas that they're looking at, but they need to dig deeper and understand how they relate to each other. Because if you can understand addition and subtraction well, you can learn addition and subtraction of fractions and positive negative numbers, and all kinds of other things. But if we don't teach our kids to understand the basics, well, they're going to struggle in the harder concepts. And the real goal of teaching math is to solve problems. I used to be the teacher that would go and work through all the problems on the page, because that's the problems are on the page. So that's what you're supposed to do, right? So we do all the problems on the page, and then there would be a problem to solve. And I always told the kids, listen, if you get all the other stuff done well, you don't need to solve the problem. And that was the complete opposite of what I should have been doing. They should have been practicing less, digging deeper, and solving the problems. So let me encourage you to teach your kids to understand math. They need to solve the problems. So your day-to-day real life problems can be part of what this looks like. And so in the math that they're learning, whatever materials you're learning, make sure you have plenty of practice, but make sure they are actually solving problems. Not only that, but we want them to have a biblical worldview. And as parents, we want to help shape that worldview. And I think that math is one of those subjects that is the most difficult to do that. It seems like it's almost neutral, but it isn't. Math is not neutral. Math is part of what God has given us. And so when we go back to Genesis and creation, God put Adam and Eve in the garden, and he said, I want you to take dominion of everything in it. It's yours to use. These are your tools. And I want you to, multiply and take over the earth and use it. And of course, we know what happened. There was the fall, which affects us to this day. Every day we struggle with that. But we are still here on this earth, and we are still asked to take dominion of it. And part of taking dominion of that is using our skills, our abilities, our talents, the things that we learn to glorify God. And because we're image bearers of God, and God designed math, we have opportunity to use that, and that actually images forth his image. But not only that, we can use math to love our neighbor. And so when you're talking about math and solving problems and having those hands-on experiences, loving your neighbor is very important. And if that's not important, then we're not going to really care about what we're using this algebra for or what we're using geometry for. It's just the thing to do. But if we understand, look, this is a tool that God is giving you, and an opportunity for you to learn something to show love to your neighbor. So yes, we are going to learn our times tables. Yes, we are going to learn how to solve for X, because there's reward in that. It's in loving your neighbor. It's imaging forth God. It's knowing God. And so the reason I'm kind of talking about these bigger pictures is I want you to understand that there's super great value in teaching your kids to understand math. It's very easy to get a workbook out and practice problems and then move on. But as Christian parents, we want more for our kids. We want our kids to use these skills however God uses them in their daily life, possibly in their jobs. And as a Christian, those are the things we want to do. We want to glorify God, and we want to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so in order to do that, we want to solve real life problems, and we want to have hands-on activities to do that. And Manipulatives gives us a way to do that. As we're talking about those sorts of things, and this is something that never really occurred to me until I was asked to write the career links for 6th grade math. It never occurred to me to appeal to our kids the value of what careers use math, and how a regular person every day uses math to serve God and to love their neighbor. One of the chapter openers I wrote for 6th grade was about firemen, and how a fireman or a firefighter knows as soon as he or she pulls up to the fire hydrant, there's a cap on it with a color on it, and that cap indicates how many pounds per square inch the water will be pumped. And so when a fire truck comes to your house and you have a 2-story house, because of fire codes, they know how long of a hose they need. But depending on how much water is pumped out, if they don't choose the right hose, the fire will take the house down before they can get to it, or it can hurt the firefighters. There's not enough water pressure or too much water pressure. So they know, they're trained to know the pounds per square inch based on the color of the the cap. And so that's extremely interesting. That's interesting to a child. It makes you grateful for math in that case. And so talking about careers in math, talking about what your kids are interested in, talking about, people in your church or in your co-op and what they do in their lives, and letting them talk and speak to your kids about how they use math, that builds interest. And as you're building interest, your kids aren't dreading and are frustrated with math. They want to work a little harder at it because they see there's value in it. And so hopefully you're getting an idea of an overall math, love of math environment in your home. And again, it may not be the favorite subject, but I do think that if you approach it with this a little bit, I think it will help you as a parent understand the needs that you have for your kids in providing the materials they need, providing manipulatives that they need, and then pointing out the things right in scripture. Some things are right in our face. We talk about the big ark up in Kentucky. I hope you get to go visit it if you haven't done it yet. But the math that was used there is incredible. And to see the design that God created, and even in stories of Joseph, where God told him exactly what to do. And he did those things, he planned and he organized. And if he had not followed those directions, if he had not calculated properly, he would not have had enough food to feed his own family. How good God was to provide not only for the country he was in, but for his own family for years. So calculating is important. Planning is important. Understanding the need to do math well is important. And so as you're talking to your kids and they're struggling with something and this isn't fun and I don't like it, there's an example to point to and say, look, I know this is frustrating and it's hard, but you know what? When we do hard things, God helps us and there's benefits. And look what God did. He allowed Joseph to do. Look what God did here. Look what God did there. He uses people. He uses us. And so, with your children, when there's things coming up, activities or things that they can help other people, get them involved using their math and go, look how God used you to provide or to do that thing. And that helps to build that love of math as well. Alrighty, so simple things to do with your kids, like keeping a list of things, these are things we talk about as adults, but we really don't include our kids. We want to save up money. We're saving up money for a vacation right now, right? We're saving up money for things we need around the house, or the kids want new sneakers or they want a new phone. Well, we can't do that right now. Well, that's not a good enough answer for your kids. Why can't we have that? Well, honey, look, these are all the things we're trying to do right now. And this is not on the top of the list, but I'll put it on the list. And as we work through it, that also help your kids understand that you're trying to be a good steward of your money, but you could also have them start saving money for things, or maybe they want to start their own lawnmower business, right? And be able to save their own money. And so even in the conversations that you're using around your lessons are valuable. So, wow, if we're doing all this talking or using manipulatives, how are we going to get all this math done? We're going to talk about that because I think it's important. And that's one of the reasons I want to spend a little bit of time on the bigger picture, because if you understand the bigger picture, then you can understand that you have choices that you can make as a parent. What's most important in this lesson or in this unit for my child for this year? So you can point to things that you do in your own church that are obvious, as well as your jobs and your day-to-day. We touched on the critical thinking a little bit earlier, and it's important that kids have the hands-on problem-solving activities. So your manipulatives-based learning may be providing a dinner, creating something, making curtains, making something for somebody else, providing things. We're getting ready to do like a neighborhood Bible time for our church. And so, there's going to be crafts and snacks. We need to make sure there's enough for everybody. And I'll be cutting up little things and putting them in little baggies and organizing them. And that's kind of thing your kids can do. They can be visiting people in hospitals or nursing homes and providing things for them. That takes time. And so we want to have the comprehension of math, but we also want them to compute, because it's not going to be just about like, oh, this is such a good thing. We had such a good day. We had so much fun. Looks like you understand. Now let's move on. Well, then you give them a workbook page to do, and they're like, no, we don't get it. So we've got to transfer that learning from the abstract, the concrete things that we're doing with our hands, to the abstract. And so a lot of times in a teacher's edition, there'll be lots of suggestions of things that you can do. Now, a lot of parents don't know this, but most curriculum companies are thinking about, they need to provide materials to have lessons for 180 days or so that you have a full year. And of course, in South Carolina, where I live, you have to have 180 days of homeschooling, but you don't have to have 180 days of math, right? And so you can pick and choose. And so what's there is, we say it's sort of like a buffet. You pick and choose what your child needs, and depending on their learning style and what your goals are for math, you pick and choose from that. And so for me as a mom, I'm going to push, especially for these younger years, for them to get a good foundation to understand using manipulatives, but I also want them to do real life stuff. And the more, the older they get, the middle school and high school, even though the math gets a little more abstract, I still want them using math every day. That means all kinds of things. And so that means I might be cutting some things out of the materials. They don't need to do 20 problems on the front of a page and the back of a page and work it in every detail. You can certainly cut them down to less problems and make sure they understand, but you also want them to use that math. And so comprehension is very important, but computation is important too. And so having good materials that gives you that balance and opportunities to choose from makes it easier for you. We always say, why reinvent the wheel if it's already been done for you? And so a lot of times we gather all kinds of things, and with manipulatives, and we go to conventions, we pick up clocks, and we pick up blocks, and we pick up these things and those things. You might already have enough stuff to teach your kids. But the things you have at home also work. And so don't overwhelm yourself with, I need all this stuff. You need a well-written lessons that fit your worldview, that give you that comprehension and the computation, and then you take the tools you have and make that work for your kids. So that being said, then, as a parent, you of course want to develop your skills in your math so that they're successful. You don't want them to come to a certain point where they can't use the math. Now, listen, there are kids with learning disabilities, and there are kids who struggle, and that's natural. And so sometimes you need to park somewhere a little longer so that they get it. And it may take 3 or 4 days for them to understand a concept. It is so much better to take the time and let them understand it by using hands-on and cut the paperwork away and then move on, than to zip through it and hope they caught it, because they didn't. And what happens too, if they don't sleep on something and use it the next day or the next day, it's gone. And then we're giving them more information, and their poor little heads are trying to sort through. So they're able to recall something that they did, something that they saw, much easier than problem number 7 from 2 days ago. So helping them to understand the math is important. We want them to solve math problems in everyday life. Of course, you want them to compute accurately. We talked about Joseph and how important that was. And we want kids to have an interest in the uses of math. And again, this was a new idea to me as a teacher, sadly. And if I had the opportunity to homeschool my kids, and as I'm helping my kids homeschool their children, my grandbabies, I'm pushing for this because math isn't everything. And so I want them to be interested in the math in their world. And not only to be interested in the math, but to understand that God has something to say about it, and that is a tool they can use to show love to a neighbor. And so that kind of gels it all together. So if those are our goals, oh my goodness, I just went forward a bit here. If those are the goals, then this is the main goal here, and that is we want our kids to understand math. It's funny, I've seen some conversation on social media. Do you let your kids count on their fingers? Those are the very first manipulatives that God gave them to use. So yes, they can use their fingers. They can use their fingers. They can draw dots. They can count sticks. They can count buttons. At some point, though, you want them to be able to solve the math problems without that. But initially, absolutely, this is part of discovering math, is understanding the patterns and things. And so absolutely, yes, they can use their fingers. So research shows that students must learn math with understanding, actively building new knowledge from experience and prior knowledge. So let's say that we've done fractions, and we've learned that fractions are part of a whole. And so we learn a whole and a half and a third and a fourth and a sixth and an eighth, and we've played with the parts and pieces, and we've taken a Hershey's bar and we've broken it into pieces, right? And we've done all the fun stuff, and we cut up brownies into pieces and pizzas into pieces. But as we get a little bit older, we're going to learn how to add and subtract fractions. And then maybe multiply or divide fractions. And that gets really hairy. It gets very confusing if you don't understand what a fraction actually is. And so kids struggle with the numbers on the bottom and the numbers on the top, and which ones are the greater numbers and which ones are the lower numbers. But if they understood well what a fraction is and what those numbers on the top and the bottom mean, and they've had experience with that, when they get to the next level of using fractions, they've already got the hard part down. Now it's actually using that together. So they're actively building on knowledge, but notice it says from experience. So it's not just knowledge. It's not like I did a page 2 months ago on that. Remember that? Let's pull it out. But there's an experience that happened, right? And so your homeschooling is full of experiences. And so we want to provide those experiences every day. It also shows that the teacher or the parent then needs to understand the math that they're teaching. And this is hard because some of us have only had so much math, or it's been 30 years since we've had some of this math. And so that's where having well-written materials will help you, because it will explain a lot of that for you. You also need to understand how your child learns math. And every one of your kids is different. And so they're going to learn math differently. And so there's fun things you can do together. But then when it comes down to the meat of certain lessons, you're going to need to tweak that for each child. So your child who's a visual learner, you're going to be drawing out how to solve problems. Where, you know, your auditory learner's not interested in that. You could talk to them and they could be doing something else the whole time and they've caught it. They just need to hear it. So you need to know how your kids learn and understand math, and then kind of tweak your math lessons toward that. And so you want to select activities to help the learning. And all kids learn by hearing and seeing and doing. So any opportunity that you have to do multiple ways of teaching will help all kids at the same time there, which is super helpful. And again, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Oh no, I'm gonna have to come up with 3 separate ways to do things for my 3 kids. Nobody has time for that. It's not practical. But again, having well-written materials and having good supplies of things will help you to be able to do that. So if manipulatives are so important, and because that helps some interaction between me and my child, I need to be able to know how to use these things. And so there are manipulatives packets that you can buy. We actually offer a set of manipulatives. They're not that expensive, and everything that you need, from rulers to fractions to money to flashcards, are included. They're very reasonably priced, or you can use things in your own home or create your own. There's also such thing as virtual manipulatives, and you can go online and you can download those things as well. But you don't want to just use manipulatives for the sake of using them. It needs to connect to a concept here. So we're going to talk about what that looks like so that it makes more sense. So besides the fingers that God has given us, we also have other objects that your child can use to help them to learn a concept. So that could be Cheerios, it could be a ruler, but this is an actual object that's used for the child to be able to figure out something. And it also is something for you as the parent that you can use to model that. So, you know, you might want to have a big thermometer while your child has a little one. Or you might want to have larger objects of what the child has, or you might have the same thing. But it's helpful when a parent has manipulatives as well as the child, so the child can see the parent doing it, they can hear the parent doing it, and then they can follow. And I'm one of those people, I want to see it first before I do it. For all of us who like to watch DIY and cooking shows, you know what we're doing there? Yeah, we're watching them do it first. And how many times do we go to look to YouTube on a video? You know, I can read. In fact, I did it today. I have a thermometer. Speaking of math, I have a thermometer and it was reading Celsius. And so I was sitting there Googling how to, how to figure out the Fahrenheit from Celsius. And I had to go onto the website and figure out how to change it on my thermometer because I don't want to have to do that math every day, right? So I had to go on there to do it. And eventually I got to a video that told me how to do it, and I had to stop and watch it. And so it's the same with your kids. They're listening, they're hearing, and you know, sometimes they get it and they don't need it. If your kids get it and they don't need it, don't do it. It's okay. They don't need it for everything. So it builds that strong foundation of understanding the math to build to harder math, like we talked about. It also keeps your kids actively involved. If your kids aren't actively involved in their learning, how much are they really getting? Hard to say. And also, you know, part of the beauty of homeschool is the interaction you're having with your kids. So yeah, you can have fun and engagement over math pages. You know, cut some of the problems out, do less, do them together, have fun, and then let them work on the rest themselves. And of course, we talked about it meets the needs of different learning styles, which is really helpful. I always thought manipulatives were just blocks, but no, indeed, they are not. You can learn place value, adding, subtracting, multiplication, division, fractions, measurement, pre-algebra, geometry, all of this, anything through grade 6 easily can be used with manipulatives. And even in the upper grades, you can do that. As you're talking about geometry and things like that, there's no reason why your kids should not be getting their hands on getting dirty and working on projects as well. Now that's going to take a little more creativity, but again, if you know the things your kids are interested in, then start gearing your math lessons towards those interests. So if your child loves sports, loves basketball, start talking about the angles and how that works. It's amazing how much math is in the day-to-day and we don't even think about it. So we want our kids to be able to transfer that learning, those lessons we've taught them, to other things in math. Remember when we did that? Well, it's the same thing, but now we're doing this. Oh, okay, I remember that. Remember critical thinking we're talking about? Okay, if kids are just doing workbook pages, there's not a lot of thinking and reasoning going on. They're just doing the steps. Now, yes, you do need to think about where is the tens place or the hundreds place when I'm doing multiplication or division there. But if you're doing problem solving, they're thinking outside the box. That's what we want our kids to do. We want them to think outside the box. Listen, you need to know your math facts. You need to do long division, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, as adults, we use a calculator, right? So we need to teach them those skills, but we need to teach them those skills to be able to solve a problem. So present problems to your kids, and they have to think outside the box. And you know what? They might come up with an answer that you're going to go, no, that's not the right answer. That's not the way I would do it. Well, you know what? If we're teaching and encouraging them to think, let them think. And you know what? Sometimes I would have kids come up with ways to do problems, and I knew it was not going to work because I was a grown up and they were 7, you know, but I would let them do it. And as they were working through it, they were like, oh, I get it. Aha, we learned through our mistake, or we tried something and it didn't work. Over and over again in history, scientists, mathematicians, and moms and dads in every walk of life use math and fail and learn the failure to be able to use that failure to be able to succeed. And so how many times did Thomas Edison do the same experiment over and over and over and over and over and failed and failed and failed, right? And so as we're talking about those things, your kids are trying to figure out a way to do things, let them try different things. And you know what? Sometimes they come up with ideas that are better than ours. And that's okay. That's what we want to encourage, right? All right. Here's just a couple of tips, because what happens is you say, okay, I get all this. I get the biblical worldview idea. I love the critical thinking thing. We're going to do more hands-on. We're going to do more problem solving. And so I'm going to pull out my pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters, and half dollars, and we're going to do some math today. And inevitably, someone gets into trouble. Someone's fooling around. They're missing pieces, right? And so I often encourage parents, listen, when you give kids things to put in their hands, they're going to fool around with them. This is what they do. So you want to tell them, this is what this is. This is what this is for. We use these geo boards. I don't know if you're familiar with those or not, but it's like a square board with little pegs in it, and they are to design, different types of angles or shapes in it. Well, as soon as you start pulling those out, the rubber bands go flying, right? And then he hit me. She did that. You're like, why did I pull the manipulatives out today? We could have just done a worksheet. And so understanding that there's going to be behaviors that happen when using manipulatives. So you need to think through that a little bit. You need to make sure you gather them ahead of time, that everybody knows where they are, and what to do with them. And so again, you want to give those expectations to your kids, and you want to connect the use of the manipulatives to the operation. So if I were to take out little chocolate candies today, or little fruit flavored candies today, and I say, hey, we're going to do some multiplication problems using these candies, I can write the abstract 3 times 7, 3 sets of 7, and I can have them demonstrate by showing me 3 sets of 7 and creating that. It takes a while for, a 7 or 8 year old or a 9-year-old to put 21, candies or Cheerios out. And you're thinking, I got stuff to do. But in those first lessons of multiplication, where you're really building the foundation, it's worth it to take the time and let them try this over and over again, using manipulatives, so that at some point they get to the problem without the manipulatives. And having them hands-on, plus chocolate's fun, okay? And also you want to be able to use pictures. The kids need to be able to transfer the actual concrete object to pictures, because we don't always have the actual items all the time. As homeschool moms, we don't always have, half dollars and silver dollars and all those things. And so having pictures, or having them draw pictures of things, helps as well. But at some point, they need to do the abstract, to be able to do the 3 times 7. And so showing them the 3 times 7, the numbers and numerals there, beside the pictures and beside the concrete, that helps them gel, that helps them understand putting those things together. And so when you do take away the concrete, there are pictures on the page, there are numbers and numerals on the page, and then at some point they're just going to be hitting the numerals, and they've got it, they understand the concept. So you're not using manipulatives for every single lesson. You're using them to introduce a new concept and to build something on that. On the days where they understand and they're doing fine, you don't need to pull manipulatives out. But there might be a day where you give them a page to do independently, and you realize, oh boy, he's still not getting the tens goes in the tens place. We need to go back and spend more time. Great, pull out the manipulatives, do 3 or 4 with him, make sure he's got it. Then tell him if he wants to use them on his own, he can. And then move on from there. And so it's a nice tool to be able to help and remember when you need it. So I do suggest you allow your students or your child to explore the new materials, because they already will be by the time you think about it, and discuss appropriate behaviors for using them and storing them. Listen, mommy and daddy worked really hard so you can have these extra things. And so you've got brothers and sisters who need to use them too. And so we're going to be kind and gracious in how we use them. We're not going to be, just flipping them, bending them, or, these are a tool that we're going to use as a family. So let's be kind in how we use them. And sometimes things break, and that's okay. One thing that we do with our manipulatives from BJU Press, they have so many of them, honestly, you could lose half of them, and you have plenty for your child if you needed it. But, when you're talking about 3-dimensional objects and things that your kids are using at home, you'd like to be able to use them for each of your kids the best that you can. I do have a great suggestion for parents understanding how to sort if you use paper manipulatives. This is a link to our YouTube channel, Homeworks by Precept. We represent BJU Press, but these are homeschooling moms and dads all over the country who use the materials, and they have done a ton of videos that are practical videos for parents, how to do this, how to do that. Whether you use our materials or not, the videos are really great because you're hearing from a mom or a dad, look, this is a great way to help your struggling reader. This is a great way to do things. And so we'll put the link in later for you to see that, but it is important to know how to store them. Oftentimes with the kids, I would get the zippered bags. I don't recommend you get the zipper bags with the zipper that goes across the top because eventually that will break. But for the larger objects, you put things in a larger bag and smaller things in smaller bags. And you keep them somewhere where you know where they are and they're easy to use. And so you can actually see in this particular picture for people who are looking, she not only has the manipulatives that come with the materials, but she's also got her three-dimensional things that she's collected as well, because why not? They're there and they're fun to use for the kids as well. So that being said, I thought we could do just a quick little quick little problem together so that you get an idea of what we're talking about. And so let's say that I'm going to do an activity and I'm going to need a bunch of marshmallows, bunches of marshmallows, and I need to be able to have a certain amount to do the activity. So maybe I'm going to do a fun activity with my co-op, and we're going to make three-dimensional objects using mini marshmallows and toothpicks. And so we're going to do pyramids, you know, we're going to do cubes, and we're going to do all kinds of things and try to make solids. I'm going to find out how many edges and sides we have. And so if I don't have enough marshmallows for this project, there's going to be some child who doesn't get to do it. And that would not be very loving of me as a co-op leader to not have enough. However, I don't want to spend a ton of extra money on things that are going to go bad, right? And so a lot of times when we go to buy things at the store that are fun to use for manipulative, it will often say for the quantity about this many. There's about 25 candies here. Well, listen, if it's too few, some child is going to be left out. And honestly, if I buy an extra bag, I'm going to eat it. So I don't want that to happen either. And so I want to spend my money wisely. I want to be able to do this activity. So I need to figure out how many marshmallows I need in total. And once I know how many I need, then I can divide them into baggies and provide those for the kids. So I start with a problem. Okay, I have a problem I want to solve. This is interesting enough. I think that a child wants to know. This might be a time to pull the marshmallows out. And so we're going to ask the kids, how can we solve this problem? So a lot of this is asking questions. How do I solve this problem? Well, I've gone to places where people will say, well, this is a multiplication problem, because they already know that. I have other people who will tell me this is an addition problem. And then I would ask, how would this be an addition problem? Well, it's not 3 plus 227. What is it? Well, it's 3 bags of marshmallows. So this bag would need to have 227. This bag would need to have 227. This bag would need to have 227, right? So that's 3 sets of 227 or 227 repeated. And we're teaching them repeated addition so they get that. Or you could do the really bad thing. You can dump them all out into a pot or on the table, and you can count all of them, right? And you think that's ridiculous. But you know, sometimes in life, we have to do the ridiculous to solve a problem. So it's okay for your child to come up with an answer that's not the most obvious, because really sometimes in life we have to do the hard thing and go, I can't believe I'm going to have to do this, but I'm going to have to dump them all out and count them. That's okay, because your kids are thinking. And so we want to represent this. So we have the number 227, and that means that we have 2 hundreds, 2 tens, and 7 ones. And a lot of times kids even forget what these numbers even represent. And that's why using manipulatives is super important, especially for place value. And so we have hundreds cubes, we have tens cubes, and we have ones cubes. Now, I've got to tell you the truth. Oftentimes, I can find where the problem is with a child just before where they struggle just in this area, because they don't even put the right numbers of cubes out, and they don't understand which is 100, which is a 10, and which is a 1. Well, if I'm sitting here giving them pages and pages to do, and they don't understand, the problems are wrong, and I can't figure out what they're thinking, I can't help them. But having manipulatives out helps me as a parent go, oh, that's where it is. Okay, now we can go back. So here we have 200s, 200s, 2 10s on the cubes, 2 10s in the number, 7 1s on the cubes, 7 1s in the ones place. And I would probably also draw 100s, 10s, and 1s and put slots here too for them as well. So now that was just one bag of marshmallows. I'm going to need 3. So you ask your child to write, and here we're doing the abstract again, 3 sets of 3 times 227. So then they need to show me again. Now it's funny when I do this sometimes with adults, because they already know the math, they'll start piling all the hundreds together, they'll start piling all the 10s together and all the 1s together. And I tell them, don't do that, because when you're teaching your kids, they need to understand, they need to see the difference between the hundreds, the 10s, and the 1s, because as we multiply and divide, they're doing special things in each of those places, and they need to see the difference between them. So all we've really done so far is just represent 227 3 times. We've really not done any type of math yet. And your child can draw a bag, 3 bags. It says 227, 227. There's a number of ways to solve this problem. But as we're doing that, we're connecting to the abstract. And so 3 sets of 7 1s, 3 sets of 2 10s, 3 sets of 200s, and go back and check. Do you have 3 sets of each of these things? Yes, I do. Okay, well then we're on the right track. All right, so if I have 3 sets of 7 1s, how many 1s do I have? Now, at this age, some kids know and some don't. But as adults, we know there's 21 1s. And 21 1s does not really work in the 1s place, and so we're going to need to do something with those 1s. And so we call it renaming, and renaming basically means you're exchanging one thing for an equal value. So you're exchanging inches for feet, you're pennies for dimes, feet for miles, 1s for 10s, same thing. It's just like exchanging money. It's the same idea. And so we're going to rename those 21 1s into something else. So what if I don't want to pull cubes out and I just want to do this on the page? Well, you can easily do that. Since we're going to be using the 10s, we're going to circle 10 1s, and they can draw a line and put the 110 over in the 10s place, okay? Also, we see how many 1s are left. There's 11. Can we have 11? Nope. What are we going to have to do? We're going to have to rename again, right? So they circle it, they draw a line over to the 10s place, and it's really important that they actually do this when they're learning at the beginning, because what's happening, their hands and their eyes and all these things are moving from one side to the other. And for kids who struggle, have learning disabilities, have dyscalculia, who struggle with hundreds, 10s, and 1s in place value, they're learning what goes from one side to the other and how they equal each other. And so drawing the circle, drawing the arrow, putting the item up there helps them go from left to right and to understand. And that's a really important skill for place value. And so now we see that we have 2 10s that we've drawn here, and we have how many 1s left? Well, we've got 1 1 left. And so of course we're going to have 1 1. And so we're going to put that where? In the 1s place. And you can ask your kids, where am I going to put it? What am I going to do? Because what's going to happen over time when they start asking those questions, and you can walk away and go take care of another child or do the laundry or whatever, in their head, they're saying, what do I do with this 10? Oh, it goes in the 10s place. Do I have enough 1s? Where does that go? In the 1s place. And so they're thinking through things. So now I have 1 here, but what about all these 1s we had? Well, a lot of times kids will do this problem and they'll forget to put the 2 up at the top. But listen, if they had to count all those 1s this many times, 4 or 5 times today on a page, they will remember where these 2 10s came from, and it'll end up on their page. And so this will solve a lot of the problems that when you give them work to do independently and their answers are wrong, you're like, where's the 2? Oh, I forgot. Well, if you're literally counting them out by hand, you're going to remember, because it gets old. You're counting them out. It takes time. And so Now we have 3 sets of 2 10s. Do I? Well, I do, but I have these 2 other ones too, right? So what do? I need to add them in. So now I have how many? I've got 8 10s. Can I have 8 10s? Why would I ask that? Because tomorrow I'm going to have 12 10s and I'm going to know, is it too many? Yeah. So I have 8 10s. That's right. Now I have 3 sets of 2. So I'm combining the abstract from the page to the manipulatives or to the picture. I have 3 sets of 2. Do I have 3 sets of 2? Yes, I do. How many is it? 6. Right. 681. Now you might go on a page that has a couple of problems like this and take the time using manipulatives, but honestly, to do 20 problems like this would take a long time for your child. So I would recommend that you pick and choose. You know, some of these might have a 0 in the tens place. Some of them might have no renaming. Some of them might have renaming in the hundreds place. Pick a couple, take the time, ask the questions, watch them do it, and then let them do the back independently. And even then, pick just a few. And if they're getting it, great. You're done. If they struggle, pull the cubes back out, do them one at a time and work them out that way. But again, you're connecting that concrete to the abstract. And research tells us this is one of the best ways for kids to learn new information at that level. So I wanted to show you a little bit from a teacher's edition of what this looks like, because it looks a little different than it does on what we just did there. And this was something that meant a lot to me as I was teaching, and when I teach my granddaughter now and again. These words, teach for understanding, are at the top of the page. And so before I even get all the stuff out and do the things, I'm already reminded, I've got to make sure that my child understands this, and I need to take the time and do it so that they do. And so I'm looking at the teacher's edition and I'm looking at what I need to do. Now, to be truthful, there are a lot of things on this page. And if I were to do all of them, this math lesson would take a very long time. I'm sorry about that. And so again, even in here, I'm going to pick and choose. You know, here's the teacher for understanding. I'm going to do this problem. Dad cleared land. Next week, he needs to clear this much land. How many fewer acres does he need to clear? So I'm solving a problem. You can make it something in your own home. You're using manipulatives and you're working through a problem together. And if I do all of these things, and I haven't even gotten to the workbook page yet, this is going to be a long, long lesson. So again, we're asking those questions. And so here you can see the blue writing, that's the question. We're trying to get the critical thinking and then the answers. So, you know, why can you do this? How can you do this? What is this? We're asking all those questions because we want them to think. And if you just give them a page to do, they're just working through the problem. Now you might say, what's the difference as long as they get the answer right? The problem is at some point they will hit a wall and they won't know why. So getting them to think critically now will help them so that when we're in the upper grades, they're going, why doesn't this work? This doesn't make sense. I did it this way. I did it this way. I don't understand. I've got to go back and do this way. And then they might even draw pictures or pull a calculator out and then go, okay, now I get it. And so you're sort of building them some success for life here by doing that. Okay, I did talk about that color coded. And so again, the teacher's edition is showing it's manipulative based. If your materials don't, feel free to make it manipulative based. Pull out what you have and make it that way. You can definitely do that. So this is the work text page that goes along with the lesson. Looks really familiar, doesn't it? That we just did. And so taking the time, here we have 18 problems and a problem to solve. And so this is going to take a while to pull cubes out every time. So again, you might want to choose something like number 10, that's 309 times 2 because you have a 0 in the tens place. Or number 11, where you have 9 in the ones place. It's a big number. And you might want to do one that's an easy one, like number 18. You could actually maybe even have them do that in their head, 95 times 2. They might even be able to figure that out in their head. But the one thing you definitely want to make sure they do after they've had some progress here is number 19, and that is the problem. So Miranda keeps her coin collection in a special folders. Each folder holds 25 coins. How many coins would 5 folders hold? And immediately I would have somebody tell me 30. because that's what they do. They take the first two numbers, they put them together, and I have your child explain to you, how did you get 30? Well, 25 plus 5 is 30. It is. Here, let's do this. Let's draw a picture. And so your child, you say, okay, she's got coins. How many coins does she have? Well, we don't know. So we're going to find out. So she's got a folder. Each folder holds 25 coins. So folder 1, folder 2. So you're drawing 5 squares, right? Or you get 5 sticky notes or something. Oopsie, I just went way too far. So you're getting your little things together there, and your child is working through that. Let's see if I can go back to where I was supposed to be. I apologize. My hands move faster sometimes, and this is the gift of being Italian. I talk with my hands. So PowerPoints go faster than they should. And so they're going to draw those 5 folders, and then they might actually have to put 25 things in each folder. You know what? Once they start doing that, they're going, oh, this is way more than 30. Yeah, it's way more than 30. So if they can count by 25, you can go 25, 50, 75, right? They could do that. Or you could get 5 quarters and do that. Or you can get them to draw 5 squares and put the numbers 25, 25, or they put 5 25s together. But what they're realizing is this is a larger number. It's 5 sets of 25. And this is where it really makes a difference. So if your child is not getting the problem solving, it's because they need the experience counting the hundreds, tens, and ones a few times. And once they have done that, it's like, oh, I get it. Super, because you're going to do the back on your own, and you're going to solve those problems on your own. So as a parent, then how do we find the balance between using manipulatives and doing the other stuff? Because honestly, it takes time, and yes, it does. So we talked about, cutting out some of the problems and doing some of them, which is helpful. Using the manipulatives in the first 1 or 2 lessons of new material. If you need to pull it out for help later, you can do that. But you still need to practice and review other things, because they forgot what you did 2 weeks ago. They forgot what a mile was. They forgot how to take temperature. They forgot what a fraction was. They tend to forget what they don't use. So you want to make sure that they're learning new concepts, but they're still practicing other concepts. And so having materials with a spiral approach is very helpful. A lot of people will ask, are you spiral or are you mastery? And I say yes. So for your child, you need to decide what works best for your child. They're using manipulatives to learn the harder concepts. You're getting the critical thinking. We're getting biblical review, the hands-on. But I need them to retain what they're learning. And so you need to decide how much practice you want to give them. Yes, you're going to be doing flashcards for a number of years. You're going to be doing all those things. But you need to pick and choose how much they're going to do in worksheets and practices. And that's really going to be up to you. Some kids struggle. And kids with special needs, particularly, I've had parents that have kids with Down syndrome and some other things, or it's just really hard, and they're behind academically on math. And I'll tell them, take the time to learn the concept well. As long as they're making progress, keep moving. If it's just about the math facts, keep working on the math facts. But if they can do division, long division, and all the other stuff, let them move on, because the math facts will come at some point. So if you need to use something like a calculator to figure the answer out, but still do the hard math to do it, that's fine. What you don't want is a child to be so frustrated and disappointed in the day-to-day of math that they don't succeed. So our expectations are helpful for them. So take a look at the types of materials you have. What kind of reviews are available? We have daily reviews, we have chapter reviews, we have cumulative reviews. There's fact reviews that you can do. And honestly, again, if you do all of these things, it will take a lot of time. So as a parent, pick what you want. As you're looking at materials, if you go to conventions or you're looking at the catalog or online, look at what they have available and say, okay, these are the things that are important to me. I want my kids to have a biblical worldview. That narrows it down. I want my kids to be able to have critical thinking skills. That narrows it down some more. Let's look at the teacher's edition. Does it help me teach my child to understand? Okay, that's good. Now, what kind of, workbooks do we have? How much review is there? I think my children can handle this, but we don't need all of that. And then you make whatever it is that you look for work for you. Then it becomes a good value for you. There is a great resource I wanted to share with you, and it's called afterschoolhelp.com. And this is, it's free to anybody. And there are helps for language arts, for math, and for Spanish. And you can go on there. I want to say it's grades 3 and up, and I can't remember honestly. I think that the drills are actually younger. And so they have drills for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But also for the upper levels of math, there are short videos, I believe for 5th grade and up, that you have a concept that's hard to teach. There's a short video where a teacher does a video to explain it. It's not live, it's something you can watch, but you might say, hey, I'm having trouble with long division. Go find that video and she'll explain and work through a couple problems in long division to help your child understand. So it's a great place to go for help to answer your kids. And then another great resource for learning are video courses. So let's say, wow, that was a lot. And I've got 3 kids. I don't know that I can teach with manipulatives for all 3 of my kids. Well, maybe pick the younger ones because they're a little easier, or whatever you think is best. But video lessons are a great way to teach too. And if the teacher's edition is written with manipulatives, I'd like to think that the videos, those teachers are using them as well. And so for BJU Press, the teacher is actually using the manipulatives, so the child can watch it, they can see it, they can hear it, they can follow along, they can stop, rewind, go back. But they have that model for them. So you as a parent don't have to do all the stuff. You can just have your manipulatives organized and pull them out and go, here's your stuff, take out your fractions, your rulers, whatever, and they follow along. They use it and you check on them. And then if they struggle, then you take the time, and the teacher's edition is online. You can take the time and work one-on-one with your child, and they can go at their own pace, which is a blessing. So that's my presentation on using manipulatives with a kind of a background on biblical worldview and understanding the critical thinking and why that's important. And my hope is that for a parent, as they see these things, that they'll realize it's worth taking the time to use manipulatives. There are so many benefits when you're using that, and you're understanding the biblical worldview comes into play, the critical thinking comes into play, that interaction with your child comes into play. It gives you options as a parent to meet the needs of your kids where you are, but you don't have to do it all yourself. There's also video lessons and things available to you to help you do those things.
Really appreciate it. I learned a lot and was reminded of a lot of things. I feel like everything that you said would be very helpful for all of us as we plan for a new homeschool year and want to do the best that we can in teaching our children. So I appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
Great. Great.
Do you have any final words of encouragement for our homeschool parents out there looking toward teaching math?
Yeah, what you're doing for your kids is huge. It's a sacrifice. It's tiring. Math can be one of the hardest things. And a lot of times it's easy to rush through it. Just do the math, just do the page. But honestly, if the worldview is important to you, and your goal as a family in homeschooling is to build that whole child, the critical thinking and having that relationship, how you teach math is important too, just as much as it is teaching Bible and science. So I want to encourage you that it's worth taking the time. Usually there's too much information, too much stuff that you can whittle away, and it's okay as a parent to do less, but do less well. And make sure your kids understand. The other thing is that you as a parent have support. And I want you to know that we have over 200 homeschooling moms all over the country. We have some in Canada as well. that use the materials themselves, and you've got kids with special needs, they've got kids that are advanced, you name it, just like, every kind of family you can imagine, single family, single parent families, moms that work, dads that work, they're all doing in the trenches, just like you. They're finding ways to homeschool. But a lot of them have found that these video courses are really a godsend, because someone's doing all the stuff. All you need to do is pick and choose how much of that stuff you want to use. But whether you choose to use parent-led or not, using manipulatives is important. But you have support. You have any one of these moms who can help you. There's no obligation. If you go to our website, which is homeschoolhelp.com, you can find a map, or you can go to homeschoolhelp.com/map, and there's a map of all the 50 states. You can click on your state and find somebody who can help you. And they are happy to explain to you, this is how the math works, or this is how I do this, or, this is what the book says, or this is what I actually do. Or listen, I know a lady who's got 10 kids and she's homeschooling, okay? Or moms who have kids that have graduated and they've learned how to make this work, how the lower grades work, how the high school grades work, how to write a transcript, how to prepare for college. Am I doing the right thing? How much of this do I need to teach? Do I need to do all the lessons? They're there to answer all those questions. And so you don't have to be on your own. You can be if you want to be, but you don't have to be. We want most of all to be able to support homeschool moms. And so go there and ask for help, and they're there to help you. And then also our YouTube channel, which is homeworksbyprecept.com. If you go to our YouTube, lots of those videos we talked about that moms did. And if you ever want to see a sample of a video course, BJU Press Homeschool has a YouTube channel, and you can watch a full lesson of any grade in math and see what you think about it. And even if you just look at it just to get an idea of what a lesson would look like, that would be a great thing as well. So just want to provide some resources for you and make it a little easier for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for encouraging us today in this area and teaching for understanding. And I'm sure I speak for
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure I speak for our listeners as well, that we've really enjoyed learning from you today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you get lots of resources. Check out that full website. There's so many good resources on her website, and I know that you'll make them available to them and that you'll use them and appreciate them as well.
Thank you, Sharon, for joining us.
Thank you.